I'm going to be doing a book review on The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. It's going to be quick and short because I got to take my grandma to Kohl's. But this book is probably, I think, one of my favorites thus far out of her collection of novels by Toni Morrison. And it's really about this young girl named Pecola Breedlove. She's the main character. The narrator is somebody else. Another little black girl. Her name is Claudia. I wrote some notes on it, so I'm just reading from my notes. Because there's so many points that I'm just gonna forget all of them. But there's so many things about this book, like colorism, class, self-love, and hatred, and knowing the true meaning of beauty. Sorry about the background. I'm still trying to get this YouTube thing together. Anyways, but Toni digs deep into these what I want to say, these very important points, especially for like the black community. Of course, she's a African American author, so I feel like we can relate to a lot of things that she's talking about, like with colorism, dark skin versus light skin, white versus black, and not even versus, but it's just like, how, I mean, it goes for everybody, because white people can read this book and take something out of it, but we've all been in a place where we feel like, I don't want to look like myself, I want to look like somebody else, or this color's pretty, or lighter skin is pretty, or darker skin is, how I want to look, or I want blonde hair, I want blue eyes. And back then, they couldn't really change their looks like that, especially like people in poverty, because they don't have any money to do that. But nowadays, we can get plastic surgery, we can lighten our skin, we can bleach it, we got color contacts, all that good stuff. So she digs deep, and it's condensed into like a mere 200 pages. I think the book is like 205 pages. And it was so good that I couldn't put the book down at all. I think, yeah, I mean, you see how thick it is, and then the font. I think because I work and then I go to school, so I bust out this book in like 3 days. But yeah, like I said, she has a main character named Pecola and also a narrator named Claudia. They're both about the same age, both black, but with different perspectives on color. Pecola is an ugly young girl, like they described her in the book. She ugly, like she's not described as anything beautiful. So anyways, Pecola, she wants to be white. The Bluest Eye is about her. She wants pretty blue eyes, because she's so ugly, and she thinks that blonde hair, blue eyes, basically like a little like the standard Barbie doll, is like the prettiest thing ever. Like that's the standard of beauty. She thinks that having blue eyes will solve all of her problems and solve her poverty and her ugliness. As a black woman reading this book, even though it was written over 50 years ago, it still hits home. And I think that's why it's my favorite, because it's like so relatable. I think everyone can relate to this, to wanting to look like someone else, no matter what color you are. Um, but being the color I am, which is black in America, of course, I've thought to myself, if I was a pretty white girl, I would never go through half the stuff that I've been through. Like pretty privilege. Like that's something that we've experienced every day. Like if you're pretty, you're gonna get your way. If you're ugly, you gotta work for it. That's just, sometimes the way life is. But I am black, and there's no use in wanting for blue eyes, because it's the way that God made me. Like you can't like change that. Um, Toni even hints at the different classes of race, like the difference, like in this book, she touches on the difference between colored and nigger, which I mean, I can witness that there is. I can understand what she's talking about. And on page, I wanted to read something to you all that she wrote in here. There was a scene where there's a middle class, fair skinned family, and they live in a better neighborhood. It's kind of in comparison to Pecola and Claudia's, like where they live at. I guess it's the hood. It's not really the hood, but it's just the lower class. Like they don't have anything. So It reads, white kids, his mother, and the boy's name is Junior. His mother did not like him to play with niggers. She had explained to him the difference between colored people and niggers. They were easily identifiable. Colored people were neat and quiet. Niggers were dirty and loud. He belonged to the former group. He wore white shirts and blue trousers. His hair was cut as close to his scalp as possible to avoid any suggestion of wool. The part was etched into his hair by the barber. In winter, his mother put Jergens lotion on his face to keep the skin from being ashen. Even though he was light-skinned, it was possible to ash. The line between colored and nigger was not always clear. Subtle and telltale signs threatened to erode it, and the watch had to be constant. So basically, they're just saying, you know, like they had to constantly do things like upkeep themselves, make sure his hair was cut, make sure, you know, he was well put together so they wouldn't be put in the group as dirty black people. But the next line, it says, Junior used to long to play with black boys. More than anything in the world, he wanted to play King of the Mountain and have them push him down the mound of dirt and roll over him. So he wanted to get along with the gang. He wanted to be a part of the crew, you know. And you know what, you can see that in this day and time now. Like, people from the suburbs want to be from the hood. It's the same thing. So I thought that was interesting that we go through those things now, and that was happening over 50 years ago. And I mean, the book was written in 1970, so that's just when it was written. So her ideas had to take place like way before that, probably like during the 50s and 60s of her growing up. Another point, well, it says, beyond that, Toni gets to the meat of it all. These young girls, Pecola and Claudia, and then Claudia has an older sister named Frida. And they question their beauty compared to light-skinned, pretty-eyed girls. There was this particular character, her name was Maureen Pill. She's like in the same class as Junior. They come from a pretty light-skinned, fair-skinned, middle-class family. And on page 74. So Maureen is basically like the new girl at their school. And, you know, the teachers treat her nice. The school kids don't pick on her. She doesn't get bullied. She doesn't get called dirty or ugly or any of those things. And it reads on page 74, what was the secret? What did we lack? Why was it important? And so what? Guileless and without vanity, we were still in love with ourselves then. We felt comfortable in our skins, enjoyed the news that our senses released to us, admired our dirt, cultivated our scars, and we could not comprehend this unworthiness. Jealousy we understood and thought natural, a desire to have what somebody else had, but envy was a strange new feeling for us. And this is the part that I highlighted. And all the time we knew that Maureen Pill was not the enemy and not worthy of such intense hatred. The thing to fear was the thing that made her beautiful and not us. And that stood out to me because these are young 7-year-old, 8-year-old girls knowing like it's not her fault that she's pretty. Like, they have like this knowledge and this wisdom, like this self-awareness of the fine line between them and us. And they know that, you know, it's not her fault she's pretty, or it's not my fault it's ugly. Like, they know that it's a higher power, that God made me this way for a reason, and they're questioning that. And you know, I think everybody does that. Like, why did God make me this? Why did God make me this way? Why do I have a big nose? Why do I have, you know, nappy hair or fine hair? People with straight hair want curly hair. People with curly hair want to get a perm. You know, so they know it's made plain to them that their ugliness is none of their own fault, and they shouldn't hate her because of her looks. No one acts to be ugly or pretty, but a higher power, God, created them that way. And another point I wanted to point out is, this has nothing to do with colorism, this next part, but it's the scene. I don't know if I said in my other video, but this is like the third or fourth Toni Morrison novel I've read. And if you know how she writes, first of all, she's a great writer. The way she writes is like amazing. It's like music, but in words, like the sounds, but in words. I don't know if that even makes sense. But every time I read her novels, I'm like, dang, That sounds good. And so, you know what, when I read this particular passage in a book on page 130 to 131, it's a sex scene. It's not a sex scene, but it's like a love making scene between Pacola's mom and dad. I think her dad's name is Charlie. I forgot her mom's name. I didn't write it down. But she's basically, it's a flashback to when um they were young and they were first in love, and you know, it's all magical and stuff. And I don't know if y'all have ever read Zane, but I used to read Zane in like middle school, and those were some nasty books. And then you read a sex scene like this, and it's just like it makes you feel like the intensity of like love making. Maybe it's just me, whatever. But I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read in the middle of it. Then he lifted his head, turned over, and put his hand on my waist. If I don't move, he'll move his hand over to pull and knead on my stomach, soft and slow like. I still don't move because I don't want him to stop. I want to pretend sleep and have him keep on rubbing my stomach. Then he will lean his head down and bite my tit. Then I don't want him to rub my stomach anymore. I want him to put his hand between my legs. I pretend to wake up and turn to him, but not opening my legs. I want him to open them for me. He does, and I be soft and wet where his fingers are strong and hard. I be softer than I ever been before. All my strength in his hand. My brain curls up like wilted leaves. A funny, empty feeling is in my hands. I want to grab hold of something, so I hold his head. His mouth is under my chin. Then I don't want his hand between my legs no more because I think I am softening away. I stretch my legs open and he is on top of me, too heavy to hold and too light not to. He puts his thing in me, in me, in me. I wrap my feet around his back so he can't get away. His face is next to mine. The bed springs like them crickets used to back home. He puts his fingers in mine and we stretches our arms out wide like Jesus on the cross. I hold on tight. My fingers and my feet hold on tight because everything else is going. I know he wants me to come first, but I can't. Not until he does. Not until I feel him loving me, just me, sinking into me. Not until I know that my flesh is all that be on his mind. That he couldn't stop if he had to. That he would die rather than take his thing out of me. Of me. Not until he has let go all of he has and give it to me. To me. To me. When he does, I feel a power. I be strong. I be pretty. I be young. And then I wait. He shivers and tosses his head. Now I be strong enough, pretty enough, and young enough to let him make me come. I take my fingers out of his and put my hands on his behind. My legs drop back onto the bed. I don't make no noise because the children might hear. I begin to feel those little bits of color floating up into me, deep in me. That streak of green from the Junebug light, the purple from the berries trickling down along my thighs. Mama's lemonade yellow runs sweet in me. Then I feel like I'm laughing between my legs, and the laughing gets all mixed up with the colors. And I'm afraid I'll come, and I'm afraid I won't. But I know I will, and I do. And it be rainbow all inside, and it lasts and lasts and lasts. I want to thank him, but don't know how, so I pat him like you do a baby. He asks me if I'm all right. I say yes. He gets off me and lies down to sleep. I want to say something, but I don't. I don't want to take my mind off in the rainbow. I should get up and go to the toilet, but I don't. Besides, Charlie is asleep with his leg thrown over me. I can't move and I don't want to. And then she goes on to say that it ain't like that anymore. It's a throwback. It's a flashback anyway. Anyways, just like the description of the rainbows and all the colors and all these things that allude to like country, like Southern life. I mean, I just thought it was a little good piece. Anyways, I just do highly recommend this book, just because it's so relatable. It really opens your eyes to just a different type of rawness that I feel like a lot of I would say people in the Black community don't really address. I mean, we talk about colorism, you know, light skin versus dark skin, or we need to get over that. But this book goes to show that those things were is the word I'm looking for, embed deep into the Black community, like African Americans, like long before we even decided to be here, or long before our parents were even born. Like this, I don't know, it was just a good read. And I think that anybody will really like this book. So go ahead and check it out. Tell me what you think. You don't have to. You can just read it and keep it moving. But I just wanted to share. Bluest Eye, one of my favorite ones. Thanks, Toni.